Disclaimer. This discussion reflects personal opinions and interpretations based on publicly available information and court records. Nothing in this video constitutes legal advice or a statement of proven fact. All references to individuals or entities are made in good faith for discussion purposes only and should not be taken as allegations of wrongdoing unless determined by a court of law. The goal of this webinar is to promote transparency, understanding, and cooperation among MTI investors.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for attending. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a brief where we're going this evening, and I think it's important that I introduce everybody to you as well so that you know what the roles are. Okay, so so that you know what everybody in the zoo is, Yolanda basically does the admin and reads the legal stuff and works with the lawyers with the individual clients. So when we have cases that come up, she negotiates with the liquidator's back office about the claims, the claim numbers, and make sure that the people's documentation is correct. When we have somebody who needs representation, we put all the documentation together for the lawyers so that it reduces the cost of that. So we do that back office work for anybody who needs to have a representation by the different lawyers. And obviously we work with Bruce's office, we've worked with John Lister's office as well, and various other solicitors firms in South Africa and across the globe as well. We've even worked with some American solicitors firms as well. So basically that's Yolanda's job, that's her background. Anke does the email support, answers the things, and does a lot of back office work looking after all the documentation and answers emails and any queries that come in. Bruce is a practicing solicitor with an extensive... Bruce, I think you should just introduce yourself. I think I'm going to be inadequate here. I think you should...
No problem. No, just very briefly, I'm a South African attorney, and then I'm also an English solicitor. I practice in both jurisdictions. The reason I got involved in this particular matter, we do a lot of litigation. John Lister asked to assist with a group of respondents in England. And as we chat a little bit later, I'll just share what's happened without going into too much detail, what I've seen and what I can share, and how I see that possibly you need to coordinate, or a suggestion on coordination to take it forward. Thank you, Chris.
Okay. All right. And then Anton, I'll give brief, and Anton can correct me on this. Anton was the guy who started the liquidation. He's actually the guy who threw the wood in the fire right at the beginning, legitimately as well. And I think he was very brave to do that at the time. And he instigated the liquidation, and on the basis of his affidavits and reports, he put together liquidation. At that time, we got involved, Get a Quid. We first opposed the liquidation because there were assets available, but the problem was that the amount of debt as a result of the investments far outweighed what was physically reported as assets. So at the end of the day, there was no doubt that the scheme was being instigated and run by people who had some shady background. And the stories they were telling online to all the investors weren't aligning with the information that we actually had at the time. And then we backed off. We opposed the liquidation, got all the information together, spoke to Advocate Hendrik van Staden, who was advocate of record at that time, and Anton and everybody, and then we supported the liquidation, and the whole process started from there. We withdrew to an extent from the process after the liquidators had been set up and all of that was in place, and we thought, okay, everything is fine now, this is the end of the road for us, and we withdrew because we had other things to do, because all of that work up until that stage had been pro bono. End of the story was we were then asked to come back in again, help again, sort it out from the beginning. When the liquidators had their first distribution or had their first report to the creditors, and I blew up in that meeting because what they were saying and what they were doing was just a mess. And you can go back, that video is on YouTube from when that happened. And then we started doing this work in the back office to try and get all the claims sorted, as many claims as we could for those people who joined us and wanted us to try and help get their claims submitted. So that's where we come from. Anton, you have, as far as I know, you're setting up an action to take course against the liquidators. And I really appreciate that you're doing that as well. And I think the biggest thing that I would say that comes from what you have said as well is we should join forces. Anton, do you want to add something to that at this stage?
Good evening, Chris. I think you will understand that at this stage I can't say much, but yes, the MTI action group, and I need investors, whoever, creditors, losers, winners, everybody, to team up and support me, please. We are gathering evidence, and we're not going to leave this here. We're going to take it further. So I need the support from everyone, please.
Okay. All right. So I think the opportunity lies for all of us to work out a scheme that we can actually get some teeth to take this on. So I'm going to start by dealing with some controversies that exist at the moment. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, tell you that what happened was Anton submitted a letter to the liquidators asking certain things, asking about what was the situation, what is going on, how much funds have they recovered, when are they going to report, and there are a whole lot of points on that letter. But I think the biggest thing that came out of that letter was a declaration of who the funds belong to. So there's a question here, and this is the reality of what the question is. Originally in June of 2020, the FSCA, the South African Financial Authorities, got hold of MTI and said it was an illegal trading platform because it wasn't properly registered. They had all sorts of excuses. They were working with Bitcoin. They had all sorts of stories about this, and there was an investigation. And that's what started creating all the problems for them to continue, because their back office, a lot of people who had put in Bitcoin wanted to withdraw their Bitcoin. And when people started wanting to en masse withdraw Bitcoin, all of a sudden there was no Bitcoin available to be withdrawn. And that's how the liquidation took place from there on. And the sad thing about this whole thing is, in reality, the Financial Services Authority in South Africa should actually have put out their report a lot sooner. They only put out their report in January of 2021. Well, by that time, the liquidation was already in full force. They should have warned the public that there was a problem. Now, what's happened now, and this is where the big query is, and guys, this has massive implications. The query at the moment is that the Bitcoin, and this is by the evidence that we have, and the evidence I think that has already been put into the courts, and that is on documentation, is that the Bitcoin that was seized was in FX Choice account for trading ostensibly by Steinberg. However, that Bitcoin was held under Steinberg's name, not, as far as I know, and as far as the evidence is that I have, it was not held in MTI's name, Mirror Trading International, which is the South African registered company. So in reality, you actually have two entities. You have Steinberg and you have MTI. Well, MTI was just a trading platform, software, being manipulated on the internet, and had no relationship of what was going on in that trading account. Although all the background staff were telling you that what was going on in this trading account was what was going on in the actual trading, where the trading was losing money hand over fist. I think they lost over 500 Bitcoin in their trading. Yet they were reporting that they were making all this money and paying out as they are making from the Bitcoin that was coming in. There was no evidence ever of a trading bot, because Steinberg was asked it. There was no evidence that any trading actually took place. No evidence that any trading took place in terms of the trading bot that they spoke about. And FX Choice had no results, positive results of trading, only negative results. But that trading was done on Steinberg's wallet, not on an MTI wallet. That's the information we have at the moment. Now, the real problem, we can talk about how fair is it to claim Bitcoin at current value. We can talk about all those things. And yes, it's unfair, but they're all side issues. As far as I can see, they're all side issues. And this is where we're going now. The first thing is, and I'm going to ask Bruce just to comment on that a little bit, but as far as I can see, the liquidators knew that when they claimed that Bitcoin that was in FX Choice, they knew that was in Steinberg's wallet. It wasn't an MTI wallet. They assumed they had the authority to claim it, but they have never actually proven they had the authority to claim it. At the time, now this is where the saga gets even worse. At the time that the financial authorities were investigating MTI, they seized 3 other wallets. I think it's 3 wallets. I'm not fully aware, and I think, but as far as I know, they seized 3 other wallets as well that were in Steinberg's name. Yet MTI claimed the FX Choice funds from Steinberg as part of MTI. But they have, by their own admission, which is written in a letter to Anton Lee by the solicitors, Strydom Robbie, they could not convince the trustees of the assets of Steinberg to release those other 3 wallets to the MTI liquidators, because they claimed, the actual trustees claimed, that those wallets belong to Steinberg. Now, my question, this is now the question. So by their own admission, in the letter that Strydom Robbie wrote, by their own admission, the letter that Strydom Robbie wrote is they did not have the right to claim the original MTI FX Choice funds, because they were also in Steinberg's name, as far as I know. Now this just opens up a can of worms, and everything else that happens afterwards becomes either knowingly fraudulent or inconsistent. So the question that I have, and the question that has been asked by Anton Lee, is who owned the original funds? And right now, the evidence that I have at in what I've been looking at is it was in Steinberg's name and not in MTI's name.
It's important to explain to the attendees Why is that important? Because if it was in Steinberg's name, the liquidators cannot sue you for money that belonged to somebody else, i.e. Steinberg.
Yeah, but that's a side issue, Yolanda. That is a side issue.
Yes,
that is true.
matter.
It's real, and yes, and then those claims become fraudulent, and then you have a legal action later, and you have a class action against the liquidators. Just leave that alone.
Yes, no,
let's just look at the source.
Yes.
You're quite right.
Yes, but that is why everybody needs to understand why it is important to understand what the source is, because that has the implications.
Yeah, but the implications are right through the whole process from then on.
Yes.
If the liquidators have a problem confirming that they had the right to lay claim to that wallet, and they can't substantiate through law, that is a massive problem on the whole of this thing. And I don't know, Bruce, would you like to comment to where I've got to now?
Sure, Chris. Thanks very much. Just from a legal point of view, just to tell you where we are. So in England, there's, as I've said to those who listened to the last one I spoke about, there's litigation where the South African judgment is being used to sue individuals in England. Now, and my particular style is to act as simply as quickly, but also to use our funds sparingly, because legal fees are horrifically expensive, whether it's in South Africa or in England. So where we're at a point at the moment is that we've got various defenses, and the one that has been spoken about is that the claims are prescribed in South African law, which means they've died. Now, whilst we've been going along, I've been getting more and more information, which at the beginning was just sort of smoke that was in the air, and that smoke's got thicker and thicker, and now that smoke seems to actually have ignited into a good point, an actual flame. And that point is that, and I'll use Mr. X. Mr. X invests in good faith in MTI. He then finds out things don't work out. The liquidators then put MTI into liquidation. Mr. X puts a claim in saying, look, I want my 2 Bitcoin back, or whatever it was. He then ends up in good faith putting that claim, finds himself on the end of being sued for the current value of the 2 Bitcoin, only to find out, and this is what the smoke might be becoming a flame, is that in fact the liquidators may have liquidated the wrong business. Now, this is the fact. As lawyers, arguments, conjecture, speculation, they're all interesting, but they mean nothing to lawyers. We look at fact. So what I'm needing at the moment, if we're going to use it as a shield, is that fact, is when Mr. X was buying coin with, via the mirror trading scheme in good faith, in fact, was he dealing with Mr. Steinberg in his personal capacity? And if so, then none of this should have happened. And then we've got a shield, because then we can't be sued because the wrong company's put into liquidation. What Yolanda was just briefly mentioning there is a lot of you will suddenly realize that shield comes with a sword, and that sword is to go back, because now what's happened is that you were waiting to get money back from, and you were told, claim from MTI. You've now put in a claim against MTI, but in fact, your claim should have been somewhere else. So you've been, it could be unwittingly, but you've been told to go a certain direction and you couldn't go another. And that's where it becomes a sword, because you can use that to sue. So Chris, that's where we are. And so the fact that we need is to establish exactly by forensic audit, we're busy through the courts to try and get that as to what that fact is.
Okay, so now I just want to take you to the next stage that we are looking at the moment. So I have it on good advice that has been submitted in the court papers, that originally the funds that were being collected, let's call them the Bitcoin that were being collected were distributed amongst up to 6 different wallets. So they were using 6 different wallets, none of them marked as MTI. We're not exactly sure whose names were on or who was the beneficiaries of those wallets yet, but there are 6 wallets where the funds were actually being distributed into as a result of this bogus trading that was going on and being called MTI. So your coins were being deposited into one of 6 wallets. Now, this, guys, I'm telling you, we need to establish this forensically. I'm telling you, that's the prima facie information I have. I have not had sufficient time nor resources to investigate this. But if we assume, and we do this forensically, and you as the audience and people who had paid into MTI give us this simple information we need, we can forensically analyze where those funds went, where those Bitcoin went, and what happened to those Bitcoin afterwards. Once we have that, then we can establish where the actual liability lies. And then now the question now arises, is, did the liquidators liquidate the correct people? The MTI was a Ponzi, there's no doubt about that. There was no relationship whatsoever between what was going on and being reported online and what was going on behind the scenes. How many people are actually involved in taking these Bitcoin, and who are they? And at the end of the day, if we can get to them, we have 2 courses of action now as creditors. One is against possibly the liquidators for not having done their forensic work correctly, and their liability and insurance and the lawyers that are involved there. That is a completely different issue, which needs to be examined. And the second thing that needs to be examined is forensically who is liable to actually repay that Bitcoin. And there is no prescription on that because we don't know who that is yet. And we need to then create interruption on that so that the prescription time does not run out on us. Bruce, you need to answer that. I've got John's hand up here. John, if this is John Lister, I'm gonna let him interrupt here because he's obviously got a point to make here and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. Or John, I'm gonna give you the floor. John Lister, is that you, John? You can
you hear me?
Yes, John, absolutely, go for it.
Okay, just on what Bruce has said. How are you doing, Bruce? Hope you're keeping well.
Hello,
Just on
John.
what Bruce has said, guys, listen, everyone's talking about the smoke that's forming and the fire that's burning. Please, I sent out information previously, and it's there. The trustees of Steinberg have filed affidavits before, and all that information is on that website where we opposed the application for consolidation. If you have a look at the affidavits, I put up affidavits by the trustees where they basically say this estate belongs to us. This is what happened. They gave an opinion, which was part of their papers, by Advocate Low SC, who was a senior counsel, who basically has said from the investigation and the investigations they've done, okay, and you must remember, the trustees of Steinberg are court-appointed officials. They're not some arbitrary investor with MTI. These are people who've been appointed by the courts, okay, to collect monies and whatever. And the fact of the matter is that the one trustee has actually said to me, I said, well, why haven't you done anything about it? And he said to me, no, we haven't been able to do anything about it because we haven't been able to get our hands on the Bitcoin. The liquidators took the Bitcoin from FX Choice. So what I'm saying is they're not smoking guns at the moment. It's there to see. The blood is on the floor. The liquidators know full well that that information was put out there under affidavits and no one has dealt with it. They are suing in the 4 summons that they've issued. They are suing not only individual people in MTI, but they've cited the trustees where they're suing the trustees as well. And the trustees have put up a defense under that 424 action. It's in black and white from independent persons. It's not somebody arbitrary standing as I'm an investor and this is what happened. These are trustees appointed by the Master of the High Court in Polokwane who are saying, we've got evidence, this estate belongs to us, that it's Steinberg's alter ego. That I would really urge everyone to go and look at it and read the material that I provided you. It's in black and white. It's in court papers where that has been sworn to. And the fact of the matter is, you raised that point now, Chris, where you said, for instance, that they have admitted that the trustees aren't giving up 3 wallets. Obviously, they're not giving up those 3 wallets because they're saying, as part of their argument, this belongs to us. So what I'm trying to say to you guys is it's there already. It's not idle speculation. These are independent people who are saying it. And if need be, they will be subpoenaed to come to court and deal with it. And if the 424 goes ahead, which it will, that 424 summons, that is all going to be outed in that matter. So I'm saying to you guys, it's not just idle speculation. This is real. It's real. It's not something I've sucked out of my thumb or anyone sucked out of my thumb. It's the trustees of Steinberg who are saying that. And the other thing is on the question of the wallets. Okay, let's get to that now. In their own documents, in their own summonses in Australia and in the UK, they admit Steinberg was in control of everything. He controlled everything. And basically what would happen is if you wanted to put your money in or your Bitcoin into MTI, they would give you a wallet number and you pay it in. Who controlled that wallet? It was only Steinberg, Chris. You can't say you don't know who that is. I'm just saying that in conversation. No one can say, well, you don't know who controlled the wallets. It's in black and white. The liquidators have admitted Steinberg controlled all the wallets. And basically what he did was he stole the Bitcoin. When you put your Bitcoin into that wallet, it was supposed to be your wallet. From that wallet, okay, he then paid lots of other people from that wallet. So in other words, the Bitcoin didn't even end up at MTI. And that is the point in this matter. It didn't end up at MTI at all. Yeah. So that's in fact what happened. And then what has happened is our forensic guy has already discovered that there were what they call these ghost wallets, where Bitcoin was apparently paid out of these ghost wallets, and there wasn't sufficient Bitcoin in it to really make those payments. So, there is so much obfuscation that has been going on here. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay. And the next, there are a number of things that I could bring up now, but I'm just wanted to just raise that point with you.
Okay.
So Chris,
go, Bruce, go.
Yeah. So John, what we're missing is we've got the affidavits and we've got what everyone's saying's happened, but I don't have, unless you've got it. So Mr. X can say, I went and this is what I did with my money, with my Bitcoin, and be able to trace it forensically where it went. and where it landed. That's the only piece of the puzzle. And that's why we were having the meeting tonight, to try and find out if someone's got it, great. If not, we want to get that done. I understand it's X number of $1,000 to do that. It's not hell of expensive. I don't know, John, if you or Chris, if anyone's got that.
Yeah, no, what I'm proposing, listen to what I'm proposing. I have spoken to somebody who has evidence of what wallets, who has the actual back end evidence of the wallets that we used to take the money in. In other words, let's call it the parachute that caught all the money. I haven't been able to examine it yet, but I have this evidence. Someone has brought us this evidence. So now we're at the stage where we've got to do a forensic analysis. And guys, there's no risk to you as a person. What we will do is we will put up a place where you can go and enter the information of what you sent in. So what we would need, we just need some very basic information. We don't need your keys. We don't need anything. We just need the transaction. I can give you a little bit of background of what we need. But then we can compile all that evidence and put it to a forensic analyst who works with this type of, we've actually got somebody who's already said they will help us do this. They will then take that information and then track that to the point where they lose track of it. Because according to law with Bitcoin has to be fully tracked. The blockchain, everything, what happens to it needs to be tracked. So what we want to do is we don't want to meddle in your information. We just need some basic information. This is the Bitcoin, this is the date, this was the transaction details, this is my CTX, this is my this. That information is not going to put you in any jeopardy whatsoever. And it will all be dealt with extremely securely to determine where your Bitcoin went. If we know where your Bitcoin went, then we can then decide how to proceed with this. But honestly, why did the liquidators not do this in the beginning and really establish who needed to be liquidated in terms of MTI? There's a big question here. Why did they not do it?
Can I just say something on that? Look, I think they went about it. They liquidated the company first, and then Steinberg was sequestrated. So that was fine that they went that route, because clearly what was going on, and no one is arguing the point, is Steinberg was a thief. You know, he was a rotten scumbag thief who basically stole the people's Bitcoin.
He had a bunch of people with him as well. Were they thieves?
Well, I don't know about that specifically, but he was, if you read everything and you read the Fabricius reports and things like that, Steinberg was the basic player here. Maybe there were other people on the periphery that helped him do it, but he was the basic player. And as per the Lowe's opinion, it was basically MTI was his alter ego, if you really follow that if you read that opinion carefully. But the other thing is, and Bruce, you will know this, is that if someone is saying to you, you received Bitcoin from MTI and we're claiming it back, it's not for us to prove who gave us that Bitcoin. We're saying, well, this is what we've heard. The trustees have gone on oath and said this was Steinberg's Bitcoin. And let me tell you, they say they did an in-depth investigation and they will have all that information. And clearly, I don't know for whatever reason they're not being particularly forthcoming, but they should have all that information and they will have to be subpoenaed, and they cannot refuse to give up that information as to exactly why they said what they're saying under oath. They can't come now afterwards and say, oh, well, what we said under oath was wrong. They're going to have to put it up there and put up the information that they had. And I'm sure they will. They're probably waiting in that 44 for the liquidators, because if one has regard to that letter and I've seen it, that Anton got, they're making the point that the trustees are still challenging their right to the Bitcoin.
Obviously, they're challenging it because they've never proved their right to claim that Bitcoin. They haven't proven their right to claim that Bitcoin. The fact that they are distributing and then spending it and carrying on with it, that Bitcoin doesn't belong to MTI. This is my conjecture as a.
Well, I agree with you, because what I don't understand is, you hear all these different things coming out, but the very, very commissioner who was appointed in that matter came out and said that the account at FX Choice was in the name of Steinberg. Personally, if you read his reports, you will see that. He says that specifically. Now, everyone is going about this so-called person who was overseas, who put up an affidavit, which is probably, they say it's a false affidavit. Well, just don't have a look at the person who put up that affidavit. Look at what the ex-judge Fabricius is saying as a commissioner, that this account was in the name of Steinberg personally. And there's further information that when people contacted Maxtra Technologies, or whatever they're called, the response was, oh, sorry, we weren't aware of a corporate structure, i.e. MTI, because Steinberg was dealing with them directly.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to you that, yes, I agree with what you're all saying here tonight, and we must try and find out about these wallets and that. But much of the information that we want is already with the trustees of Steinberg.
What I would say is, I would still say, and I would still argue that the best basis for us is to start with a forensic analysis of what happened in the beginning. Where did it go and where did it subsequently go? Because if it went to, let's just assume it all went into Steinberg's control and his wallets, and then the 115 went to somebody else and 201 went to somebody else, and I'm naming numbers where we have evidence that that's how many Bitcoin were paid out to certain people. All of that needs to be properly liquidated and gone after. Why is that not happening? Because that's where the real money lies. And in the meantime, the liquidators are chasing Tansani for 10,000 Rand, and she eventually commits suicide because she can't pay it. But they're not going after these other guys who are part of the perpetrators who received that Bitcoin. That is where the real problem lies. That's the.
But we all know they're going after the easy targets first. That's a natural liquidations thing to do. It's the nature of a liquidator to do that, to go and pick the low-hanging fruit. We all know that. But the fact of the matter is they've got to prove their case. They have to prove that you were paid Bitcoin by MTI. In other words, because that's what 26, 29, and 30 of our Insolvency Act say. It's a disposition of the company's assets. Was it a company's asset? You must prove that that Bitcoin you got was MTI. In the light of all of that, I think they've got a very, very difficult case. And they must be made. I agree. You can do your forensics. I think that's very important. But the fact of the matter remains is, why reinvent the wheel unnecessarily if there's a lot of stuff that we can subpoena the trustees for? I don't know what.
John, I'm not even going to try and reinvent the wheel at all. I just want us all to draw together to have a look at this thing. And then I think at the end of the day, we mustn't split our resources, because it is going to take resources to do this. And we are going to ask for donations from people to help us to do this, like we did before when we asked when we attended all these court cases and all the rest of those sort of things. And that's what we're here to do tonight. Tonight is to steer the ship, to try and steer the ship together. That's why I invited Anton. I know Anton has got a beef, he's got some things to do, and it's important for him to get a result. But we should try and do it together. We should try and use the resources of people like yourself, John, Bruce McGregor, Advocate van Staden, and various other people who have worked with us before. And we want to do it transparently so that the whole world has access to it. Then the problem comes, if this presentation by the liquidators, that they are using assets they don't have rights to, and they have litigated in terms of those fraudulent representation of assets in other countries, they are going to become liable for all sorts of other things. And Bruce, maybe you want to just go.
Yes. So John and Chris and participants, the reason why I'd like that a forensic report in my hands. Now I understand we're not talking big money. Chris, you can tell us roughly what it is. But I don't, with courts, we asking for information, disclosure, discovery, subpoenas, but it's very expensive to do that. And certainly my people that I act for, I can't in good conscience just litigate and wait for that to happen. And when the liquidators don't do it, then force them. I want to have something in my hands. And if it's as we think it is, say to the liquidators, to the lawyers, look, here we go. This whole thing is wrong. Here it is in black and white. And then a lot of people just say, Bruce, I want to get out of this thing. And I just want to be left alone, stop paying money, or I don't want the stress. And then they're out. There are others who say, if that's true, I want to countersue and use the sword. So John's 100% right. For me, it was a rumor, which then became thick smoke when I saw the affidavits, but I just don't have that last little bit, and I don't want to spend another year or 18 months and lots of legal fees to get there. So I've got 3 suggestions. Sorry, John. One is that if somebody can fund and do that, that would be great. Then 2, once you've got that, make a call on what you do with the liquidators, what you do as a shield, what you do as a sword. And 3, and importantly, is just all the lawyers, and then at some stage would be really great to just put the heads together globally and decide what we're going to do. And from my point of view, whatever happens, I will always acknowledge John got me involved in here, and I will work with John, because I don't want to overjump you, John, because I was very grateful for getting me involved. But John, those are my comments. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, John.
No, thanks, man. Listen, you've done a bloody good job over there. You drew first blood, Bruce. So I think that's really good news, and I'm very glad I involved you. You're doing a very good service. And the point being is the liquidators got huge legal teams. We can't all do it. I can't do it individually. I've got to rely on information from other people too. So it's important that we swap information, but we do it constructively. At the end of the day, my job, for instance, I'm defending, I don't know, it's approximately 700 people now. My job is to get those cases resolved, that the people win their cases. That's my job. And the difficulty is that, it's individual cases too. So we're fighting those individual cases, and then there's a broader fight that we've also got to have that, in dealing with it. And that's where the expenses come in, because we do have to husband our resources very, very carefully in this thing. And that's where hopefully we're going to get to the point. You see there that our good friend Susan Strydom in her letter mentions they're going to be test cases. Well, that's going to be interesting because they're blowing hot and cold on that. But now that it's in black and white, I want to see those test cases run in Pretoria and in Cape Town, that there are test cases and that we get to the thing as quickly as possible. I'm very happy with that. But unfortunately, they do blow hot and cold. So we've just got to wait to see what actually transpires in that regard.
Okay. All right. So my proposal is what we will do.
May I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I just would like to add with a conversation with the wallets and the wallet addresses. If I remember correctly, every time I deposited Bitcoin into MTI wallets, the wallet that they gave you, if I remember correctly, none of those wallets were ever the same. It were different wallet addresses.
We know that. And my objective is to collect the information we need to do a forensic analysis of which wallets the Bitcoin went to. And then the question will be who owned those wallets and why were there so many wallets? That's the big problem. And then we have to understand why not just one wallet? That's the question.
What happens next, and why it matters. The next step for every MTI investor is to help build a clear, factual record of what happened to the Bitcoin. We are working with independent forensic experts to trace the flow of transactions, not to accuse anyone, but to ensure the truth is established transparently and accurately. If you invested in MTI, your information is valuable. Securely submit your transaction details, dates, wallet addresses, and transaction IDs through the form on the GetAquid website. Every verified transaction strengthens the investigation and helps reveal what really happened. If forensic analysis confirms that Bitcoin was held or moved outside the liquidation process, it could open new recovery options, identify key wallets or beneficiaries, and strengthen investor claims. If it shows the liquidators acted correctly, that result is equally important, it brings clarity and closure. Either way, only an independent forensic review can give definitive answers. This work depends on community support. Contributions to the Forensic Analysis Fund allow experts to continue tracing and, where needed, present verified findings in court. Together, by sharing information and resources, we can ensure future recovery efforts are based on facts, not speculation. Visit www.getaquid.com/forensic to submit your details, follow updates, and see how you can support the investigation. Getting this done by an independent source could be a decisive step, and may help investors who believe their funds went to MTI recover what's rightfully theirs. Thank you for standing together in the pursuit of transparency and justice for all MTI investors.
And once we've done the forensics, we'll have a much better idea of what happened in the back end.
Okay.
And John, I don't disagree with you. My point is, I don't believe MTI received anything. There was no such thing as MTI. And MTI, when it was liquidated, had got some funds from somebody or from somewhere. But at the end of the day, the 12 million that was in those bank accounts wasn't necessarily, hadn't come directly into the bank accounts. I don't know how they got there.
Okay, but I'll just leave this as a parting shot. Basically, Steinberg controlled all the wallets. He was the one who paid Bitcoin or whatever. And when MTI, I can tell you this now because they're witnesses to this effect. And important witnesses, I'm not going to discuss it here. But when MTI needed money to pay salaries and whatever, what Steinberg would do, he would then cash in the Bitcoin and then send the money to MTI. MTI was basically nothing. If you want to put it that way, it was a marketing arm of Steinberg. In other words, it was part of Steinberg's alter ego. He just paid salaries or cashed in Bitcoin to keep the company functioning. But the company didn't have massive funds. It didn't even have books of accounts, for heaven's sake. And that all goes to Lowe's opinion, which says this was Steinberg's alter ego. That's what I'm saying to you guys. So I'm just telling you for a fact that MTI did not have Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm not.
On the one side,
I
would agree with John, because if you remember correctly, here by the end of the popo hitting the fan, everybody was waiting for payments to be paid out. And all the Zoom calls, all the messages you received was from Clinton and Sherry Marks that said they're waiting for Steinberg to approve payments of withdrawal.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So our forensic analysis, when we done it, will prove that all the Bitcoin went to Steinberg. Fine, then that is proven. But until we've done that, I don't think we should just sit back and believe it. I think we need to actually have proper analysis.
No, I agree. I agree that process, you must have that process going and you can do your forensic. I do agree that Bruce needs that. I do agree with it. But I'm just telling you, and Bruce, you and I can have a chat about it tomorrow. I actually do want to speak to you about it. One of the issues in this thing, obviously privately, but we can have that chat. But all I'm saying is that if we pull everything together here, we've got a good case to fight these liquidators from suing
yes.
individual people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not only that, Bruce, maybe you can allude to some of the legal implications. If
Yeah,
we
so
joint
so
up.
that so that forensic audit, and I'll chat to John, and when we get to the time, just speaking with a couple of lawyers in other jurisdictions, is that forensic audit, I'll use Mr. X, it helps Mr. X get out of litigation, and he's not being sued. That's stress one gone. But it may also, I think we may have a way of then suing to get money back from as a result of what liquidators have done and the advice that they've given. So there are some people that would like to go that route, but that forensic audit is very helpful. And those of our colleagues here who are in America will know that there's certain remedies available in America which aren't available in other jurisdictions as a result of people being sued in America by a company that's the wrong company, went into liquidation. And there are punitive damages that arise. But for me, I don't want to promise anything until I've got in my hand that, because that will then shorten a lot of the litigation being involved in. So Chris,
100%, Bruce, 100%. And the other thing where I think this battle has been unfair, and I'll tell you this, and this is where it comes into the lack of proper discovery. They've made a discovery for the 424 application. I don't know how many pages it is, but it's bulky. It's very difficult to, and they say this must apply to all the cases in South Africa. Okay, fair enough. They want to cut costs. I think that's not a bad idea necessarily. But the fact of the matter is they're being selective in their discovery. They haven't discovered everything they should discover. And one of the things is you'll see in that discovery, I don't know if it's been made available to you, but you'll see in that discovery, they talk about Maxtra, okay? But what hasn't been discovered, okay? And I'll tell you, and that's what I have specifically asked them to discover, is in October 2020, the FSCA seized all the documentation of, listen to the words, my MTI club. And you'll see there's a document which I think I've given to you already, Chris, and I'm not sure if I've given it to you, Bruce, where I think it's JGL Forensics did an analysis of the things that were seized. But I've asked for a discovery of those documents, and they just say, no, it's all part of what we put in the discovery. I've asked specifically for that because that was the source documentation which Steinberg would have had to give to Maxtra. Maxtra didn't just invent it. And why aren't that, to me, is very important. They haven't given that source documentation. And that is critical to this whole thing. For any forensic, surely what was seized of Steinberg's computers, ladies and gentlemen, is probably singularly the most important documentation because it will show from beginning to end how this thing started. In other words, MTI, Steinberg started this, the My MTI Club, my being Steinberg's, before MTI Pty Limited was what you call it, even in his eyes at the time, or in his mind. Okay, so it started like that and it just continued like that because it was My MTI Club. Okay, and that is Steinberg. And I'm saying to the liquidators, why aren't you putting up those documents? We want to see those documents because they are primary source documents, which obviously some of that information might have been fed to Maxtra, might not have been fed to Maxtra, but that has all just been swept under the rug. And they just say, oh, it's Maxtra, it's all on the Maxtra data, which is on the discovery. Unbelievable. But I'm trying to force the issue. They must put up that documentation.
Okay. All right. So, guys, we're getting to an hour that we've been running on this now. I think that largely, I'm just going to try and do a summary so that the general public who are attending in quite a mass this evening, just so that everybody knows. In basic principles, there is a question as to whose assets the liquidators actually took hold of, and there is an argument that they took hold. There wasn't the assets that they have liquidated didn't belong to MTI, they belonged to Steinberg. Whether Steinberg had amassed those assets through his actions of MTI or not is another argument. But at the moment, from what we've seen, there is no proof that they are liquidating MTI. They are liquidating an asset that belonged to Steinberg, but only one asset. There are other assets that belong to Steinberg, which they can't get their hands on because they can't get it properly done in the courts. We are saying, and this is where we are going, we are saying we need your help, we need donations, we need to consolidate everybody's information, and we need to do a small forensic analysis of where the Bitcoin actually went, so that we know that, so that we can try and determine who actually received the Bitcoin that was collected under the MTI umbrella. That's where we are at the moment. If it comes to light, which we believe that MTI was not, that it's not MTI, then there are massive implications all throughout this thing, and it ripples through with everything they've done in the courts and everything they've done as far as the liquidation is concerned. And the question is, could they have done it better and actually gone against the people who have taken unnecessary amounts of Bitcoin out of the whole pot? And that is from Steinberg himself, but not from MTI, because MTI did not have control on that Bitcoin in the first place. So these are all the questions.
The implications for the investors?
The implications for the investors is it actually rejuvenates this whole process. If you follow this, it means that maybe, possibly, if this can be proved to have been a complete, how can I say, misstep, then the pot has to be restituted to what it was. And there are new claims that come out of that. And all those people have insurance companies. So that's where we are at the moment.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going from there, Chris. I understand that point. Obviously, the point being is that I'm acting for guys who are being sued to put Bitcoin back. There is obviously a bit of a difference between those people who are being sued, who are net losers, and who are net losers who are being sued. And obviously, there's some people who are winners. But obviously, all of that will depend. You can't sue a winner and you can't sue a net loser. If you don't have the locus, if MTI does not have the legal standing to sue, then I've done my job for my clients, and that's what I'm after. I'm after that. That's my primary goal in this thing, is to obviously act for my individual people who are being sued. There's another take, obviously, and I see where you're coming from, because you're also acting for people who are wholesale losers. I think that's a large part of your portfolio.
Yes,
and obviously, that's where people like Anton come in, because at the end of the day, what those people who've put claims in are finding is there's been no distributions made, but that pot is diminishing because there are unnecessary fights that are being had here. You know,
and illegal fights, John, illegal fights.
Well, it could be.
They can't win those fights. They've been thrown out of the court in the UK. It's illegal. Their fights are illegal because the Bitcoin that was paid to your people who collected Bitcoin wasn't from MTI. It was from somebody else. We don't know who it was.
Yes.
We just need to establish that, Chris.
Yeah, I know, but that is where the process goes, isn't it? If the source didn't belong, this whole thing, everything we talk about becomes mute. And what do you guys call it? Ab initio. Because the moment the actual funds that came in didn't belong to MTI, MTI can't claim the funds back from anybody.
No, they can't. And the funds would probably have to be distributed by the trustees, what the remaining funds are. The trustees of Steinberg. In other words, those claims that people have put in, if the liquidators are forced to pay that money, all the Bitcoin back. Not, in other words, what could happen, and I'm not saying it will happen, but it's a possibility that if, for instance, it's found by a court down the line, and I don't know how you're going to untangle this web that's been weaved, because there's been default judgments for people who couldn't afford to pay attorneys, default judgments granted against them, the liquidators have collected money. But if, for instance, the court says, no, hold on, that Bitcoin that came from FX Choice, that belongs to Estate Steinberg and the trustees.
Yeah.
Well, then the liquidators, it's true. It should follow. I don't know if it will necessarily follow, but it should follow then that Bitcoin, what was it, 1,250 Bitcoin, or whatever the amount was that got taken.
That's right.
That has to be paid back. That Bitcoin must be paid back in Bitcoin. And so the liquidators can also maybe think...
No, but John, at the current value, not at the past value.
But
the current value of the Bitcoin, it must be paid back at. Because that's what the liquidators have put the standard.
No, but listen to me. You're not listening to me. I'm saying they must put the 1,250 Bitcoin back.
Yes. Current
That's
value.
what I'm saying. Yeah. And then they're going to have to find all that money that they've paid on legal costs. I mean, that could happen. I'm not saying it will, but that could happen.
Yeah.
Those are the implications for the liquidators. If it's found that this vests with the trustees and that money at FX Choice, which ex-retired Judge Fabricius found was in the name of Steinberg personally.
Exactly.
That might very well have to be put back. And the implications for the liquidators there would be disastrous. Yeah, and they would have to contact their insurance companies. Maybe they should already contact them. I don't know.
Yeah. So, John, we agree with you in principle, but what we're trying to do is throw out all those court cases you're fighting with. So you better solve them before we throw them out.
Yeah, well, we're trying.
Okay.
All right.
Guys.
Cheers. I'm going to leave.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Love it.
Cheers,
John. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, guys. Bruce, do you want to wrap this up for us? Basically, I will set up so that the people can send us their forensic evidence, and we are going to ask for some funding to drive this matter. So, and I will send that out to people and make it available on the website for them. And then our objective is to get this forensically analyzed to see where the Bitcoin went. And then we can look at what the next stage is.
Yeah, so just to summarize, it's the 3 points from my point of view. If you can get that into my and the other lawyers' hands, we can use it as a shield to stop the current litigation against us, and a sword for those, which will mostly be net losers, who now want to get money back via what we've all been talking about. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's try and see if we can just get that done. And then once we've got that, depending on all that says, we can then map a way forward. And the final thing is, when we can, Chris, is just get all the lawyers to, at some stage from the different countries, to have a discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. Thank you so much. Okay. Anton, do you have any last comments you'd like to add to this? All right, I see Johan Erasmus. Bruce, let's just ask Johan Erasmus to raise his hand. Yes, Johan, you can unmute yourself.
Good evening, Chris. First of all, thank you very much for all the hard work and for helping for us as investors for that stage with MTI. But I just want to make sure, is there somewhere light in the path that we're walking now? Or
I think the situation is this: if we do nothing, we are sitting with a possible litigation bill that in the end will deplete the pot to minuscule amounts. That's the whole situation. If, however, we follow through on this, it could mean that everybody could be restituted to their original. Those are the two extremes. If we do nothing, the liquidators are just going to keep litigating and running this pot down. They proved it to us. They haven't even told us when they want to do a distribution account. They haven't appointed committees. They haven't talked to the creditors. They haven't tried to work with the creditors whatsoever. They're sitting on their high and mighty horses and they're just ignoring us. And I am being really nasty about that because that's what I think. I think they just think we don't know what we're doing. The second thing here is that's the bad part about it. But if we do something, and that's why Anton is trying to do something, and that's why we are trying to do something, and that's why John Lister and McGregor and everybody are trying to do something, is because we believe there is potential to save this and maybe get an even better result. But we are going to have to band together and do something about it. And that's the only way we will get a result. That's where I am at the moment.
I respect. I was walking dedicated this path, and I've got a lot of faith in you, Chris, from that stage when you started all fighting for all the investors. And I know it's not an easy road. I don't know anything about the law and all those kind of stuff. So I've got faith in you as Chris and your team. And but I just want to, my final thing is just want to let you know that stage when we started off this investment, it looks really like a legit investment. I just put like a small amount in and I withdraw it just to test it because I just want to make sure it's working, and they paid it back. And suddenly I thought to myself, wow, it's growing with the bit account. That says the Bitcoin was growing. And then the whole situation ended up where he disappeared and everything was stopped and stuff. But lucky for me, it was not my life money. It was just
there are lots of people who during the course of this time have passed away and there are a number of people that committed suicide because of this thing. And it's all unnecessary. And my feeling is it didn't need to go this way. But we've been powerless in the way that this whole thing has been dealt with. And that's why people like Bruce McGregor, Hendrik van Staden, John Lister, these people are giving their time pro bono to us at the moment to help us to try and sort this out and make sense of it. And there are lots of people like that out there. I can name a lot of people who talk to us all the time who are really working hard, and Anton as well. Anton has suffered massively through this whole process, yet he's still there. He's still prepared to get up and make things happen. And the last thing I want to do is for us all to be fragmented and fighting amongst each other and bitching with each other when we should be concerting our effort at getting a solution. That's where we need to be going. That's the way I'm looking at this.
So what is the difference between what we handed that stage for the meester, the claim that we handed in?
I think we are keeping on top of all the claims that have been submitted. They are in with the meester at the moment. Most of our people have got their claim numbers. We still have a number that we're working on to get finalized with the liquidators, and we're working on getting those claims in. But remember, those claims are against what happened in MTI. It doesn't mean that you have established your payment. Now, whatever happens to whoever, I'll just paint a scenario, and Bruce can maybe tell me about this. So let's say, for instance, the liquidators get taken off this because of the way the whole thing is going, or we get a new form of liquidation going against the people who've actually taken the assets. Because that's what I'm after. I'm after the people who've got the assets, not some fictitious names. I want to go for the people who took the assets. I want to find them and identify them through the courts and through the proper processes. And then I want to go after those people to get those assets back at today's value. That's what I want to do. That's where we will win. And that's the real thing. The question here is, and this is my question, I'm not a liquidator, I'm not a solicitor. My question is, why did the liquidators not in the beginning identify where the actual Bitcoin went that everybody paid? They could have done a full forensic analysis and then followed up on all of those Bitcoin, not just come up with some fictitious things in between and then try and blame it all on one person. I don't think one person is involved here. That's my personal opinion. That's an opinion.
Chris, the answer is the forensic audit is the shield. It will stop being sued by the current liquidators. The sword is that if they were negligent, or if somebody was negligent in doing what's been done, then you're going to sue those parties, especially those who've got PI insurance, and the insurers will come on board. They've got deep pockets to try and get the net losers their money back, either one way or the other, against those who took it, or if someone's been negligent against them.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks for your
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm going to call it a day.
Just a moment.
Yeah,
Okay, so we have a lot of questions from people saying we already have the information for forensic analysis. We do not know exactly. People who will be doing the forensic analysis will tell us exactly what they have. The proof of transfer documents, some of them you have submitted, be correct, but I am not sure. We will have to ask the experts about that.
Okay, yeah. Let me follow up on that. What we will do is we will identify a forensic analysis organization that is known and has the credibility to do this. That will be the first stage. Then we will come to some agreement with them on what the actual process will be. I've done a lot of investigations. There are 3 or 4 companies that actually do it. Another company came to fore just half an hour before the actual meeting, who already have a lot of this forensic information. Then we will ask the actual people who put Bitcoin into MTI to send us just basic information. We'll create a form that they can fill in so that we don't have to go and scrounge through all sorts of information. We need everybody to help us get that information into that form. We'll produce a video on how to do it and what to do. And then once we've got that information, we can just feed it into the machines, and that will reduce the costs of having to do it as well. We can't, if we have to go through all the thousands of documents we have to go and try and find that information, then that's going to be an absolute nightmare and cost us thousands of pounds. So the simplest thing is to do, ask each person, give us, this is the form you have to fill in, go there, go online, fill in this form with this information. This is the information we need. That information doesn't give us access to your Bitcoin wallet, but it tells us the transaction, gives us the transaction, and we can then forensically analyze what happened to that Bitcoin. That's the process.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, please, 2 things. Okay, I'm going to put on here, we will follow through with this later, but at this stage of the game, this is our website where we collect the donations. We ran these donations previously when we did the forensic, not the forensic analysis, when we went to Advocate Celiers for the work that he did, and also for the presentation in the debate judgment and various other places. So please, if you can just look at that, anything you can give, 10 Rand, 20 Rand, whatever. Dollars, pounds, please help us out. Remember, it's not only for you, it's also for the other people who've been disenfranchised. And then we will put this together and try and do a forensic analysis so that we can actually get to the bottom. And then, as Bruce said, it doesn't help the liquidators, as far as I'm concerned, have already proven to us that their forensic analysis is one-sided. I need an external opinion, and Bruce needs an external opinion and forensic analysis of what happened, which needs to then follow through. And that's really, really important, because that's important when you go to these foreign places. You need to say, look, this is the legal position from people who've actually done the forensic analysis correctly. Okay. All right, guys, that's us. Please hold the fort. We're not finished with this just yet. Help us, support us, pay our prescriptions, and please send us flowers and wine. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Anka. You haven't had a chance. Do you have any nice words for the people who you write to every day, Anka?
Yes, I was very excited to join in tonight. I was glad that I could hear a webinar and the conversations, and I am more than willing to carry on and help the clients as much as I can, especially with these transactions that we have to get in now. It's going to be a lot of work, but we can do it. And yes, I'm definitely in with the unity to push through and see that the people get their money back, because they must get it back.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. You have our sympathy with all of that, I promise you. Anton, any last words?
No, thank you. We just need the support from everyone at this stage.
Okay, Anton, and thank you so much for taking the time of being here. I really appreciate it. Yolanda, any last words?
Yes, we will send out a basic summary for everyone who got lost along the way, so that they can understand what the idea is of getting this forensic analysis done. And sorry, my camera died, guys. We just decided it's had enough. So I don't know. Okay, good night.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you all.
Good night.